The nurses and midwives were silent as I pushed my son into the world. No visitors, no one spoke to me, except the tea lady, who whispered, "Are you okay, love?"
Mommy spent her life looking after the three of us. She spoiled us and gave us a happy childhood. Although money wasn't plentiful, we had all we needed.
Mother Superior would be sitting behind her oval mahogany table and would have asked my mother a lot of questions. She told her she was to be called Kathleen.
In the chapel every morning where the ancient nuns looked around at the fallen gears with big bellies sat at the back, as if the stench of our shame was in some way contagious.
Look, we've known for years, but we've never said anything to anybody, not even in the family.
Mother and baby institutions were places where women who had got pregnant, who weren't married, they could have got pregnant from just, being out and having some fun with someone, or it could have been rape, or it could have been abuse. They were run by religious organisations, mainly the Catholic Church, but there were other organisations involved as well, and the state. And between 1922 and 1990, 10,500 women went through these institutions in Northern Ireland. And now, in 2022, 2023, there is an inquiry beginning to happen around into these institutions. The role of Sole Purpose Productions is to bring a voice to the voiceless, bring visibility to the invisible, and to bring the experiences and the stories of these participants to life, and for this to be expressed within the society that we live in, so that these stories can be heard that may not have been heard in this way through this kind of artistic process.
The approach that we've been using in our work has always been about creating a safe space to be creative that doesn't have a judgment attached to it, that enhances someone's internal confidence to find their own voice. And when you can unlock your own voice in a creative way, in a playful way, in a peer group, it often breaks down an awful lot of barriers that maybe have come through your education system or through your own life or whatever. But you can find a way to break through that in a creative way and find that voice that's maybe been dormant or latent or you didn't know you could have. You're just unlocking it for the person themselves, and then they find their own voice. And that's really the beauty of it for them, because then they take that with them in their life.
Going into it, I was a bit fearful. Didn't know what was coming or what to expect.
Is it still good?
Is it? Everybody just put me at my ease, and so that I was able to come out and tell everything,
It was a topic that wasn't really talked much about. There's a lot of stigma around it, and that did prove to be difficult when we were trying to recruit, and we had people ringing up asking about it, not giving their names, not coming forward. A few people came, doing information evening, didn't come back.
I didn't know any of them, and I'm not good in groups. When I say I'm not good in groups, I mean to join a group. I'm not good. I'm afraid of groups. If a row broke out, I would just look. You know that there, hostess, your exits are? That's me. Where's the nearest exit? And I'm out that door. I'm gone.
We knew it was going to be a challenge to get people involved in this project. We worked with Katrina Cunningham, who was a participant in the project. And Katrina was in a mother and baby home. She was also in online support groups for people who have been in these institutions. She's worked with Sole Purpose Productions before on other projects, so she's aware of the kind of work that we do. Katrina was then able to talk about the project in these other groups that she's involved in, and she could, I suppose, vouch for Sole Purpose Productions and how we work.
A friend, a very close friend of mine, Katrina, she asked me one day, would I like to come to form a group for anyone who had any experiences with the mother and babies homes or institutions. I says, Katrina, is this going to be about drama and acting? Because I can't stand up and act in front of people. And she told me no, that it was open to ourselves, you know. I was apprehensive, but I thought to myself, I'll give it a go. You know, I'm not doing much at the minute, and I want to be doing something something nice, you know. So I went along in January 2022, met with Shauna and Colette, and then we got a start date. And we went there every Wednesday in the Hollywood Trust.
My initial approach was that this needed to be very, the whole project needed to be based on trauma-informed approach, because these were people, whether they acknowledged it or not, that had experienced trauma through how they had been involved with Mother and Baby Institutes and how it had impacted them. So we really looked at things like safety and confidentiality, support, all those things, to try to make sure that we were really developing a safe place.
Many of these people had been involved with organisations before, and their stories had been misrepresented, or they'd been involved with media organisations before, and their stories hadn't been used properly, or they'd been misrepresented, or their stories had been used without their permission. So they were very, very suspicious, very dubious, not very trusting at all.
One of the other girls in the group, we were actually in primary 1 together, and we've been friends all through. She would also have been in Marianville, but at a different time than me. And this is hard to believe. We never ever discussed our times in Marianville at all until this project. And even yet, now we're still discovering other things that maybe happened, or other people that were there. And it's been really valuable to us, just for the two of us, as well as a group.
When I found out about the Sunflower Project, I went for that little interview with the girls. I felt they understood how I was feeling about being adopted and about my mother and stuff. And it was, since I've been with the Sunflower Project, the group has been so lovely. Very, very nice people, and care and trust and everything about them.
The trauma-informed approach is the recommended approach to take with anybody in any type of support where people have experienced trauma, and it's really making sure that people feel safe and empowered, I suppose, to explore maybe not so much the trauma, but how that's impacting on their life at the minute.
Before I went to the Sunflower Project, I had started to, in very recent years, connect with other groups who would have been affected by Mother and Baby Institutions. The difference for me with the Sunflowers was that this was through art. There was no pressure. Nobody had to tell their story as such if they didn't want to. People talked if they wanted to. And we discovered that as it went on, and we did exercises together, that we wrote together and talked, that people started being more forthcoming with their own stories and connected. We all connected together, and it's actually given people an interest in art, maybe people that hadn't done art before. So it was a twofold thing. It was helpful for ourselves and others, and also helped to be able to express yourself in different ways, because some of us thought the only way we could do that was talking or words, and we learned differently.
Not everyone wants to repeat their trauma. Some people just want to have it out and get it done and move on, and I think that's kind of what part of what it is that we've been trying to do through this is like there's a certain release, but it's not something that's on a repeat cycle, because they don't want to re-traumatize themselves all the time, and a lot of their lives are very positive. This has been something that's been unlocked and deep and buried, full of shame, and they just want to let go of it, and creativity is great for that.
Some nights we didn't talk about our stories, we talked about ourselves, although that is our story, but about other things that happened in our lives, and you knew they weren't going to be talked about outside, and it was great.
My mother's story. My mother was called Mary Kathleen. She was 19, young, living her life and having fun. One day, while she was out with her friends, a car pulled up and told her to get in. She was taken to the police station. She was told that she was going to be taken to Maireann Mother and Baby Home in Newry. She was 6 months pregnant. When I wrote my monologue, I was feeling quite emotional, I suppose, with my mother's life, how she was, how she would have felt, how she was treated in the Mother and Baby Home. I was 9 months when I left there with my mother. My mother and me left the same day, and she went to work in the laundry, and I was fostered to Drapistown. When the time came for me to be fostered, my mother was asked to get me ready to take me to the black car where 3 other babies were going as well. The mothers had to watch as the car drove off with their babies in them. Before I made contact with the Sunflower Project, I knew that I was adopted, but like I was always interested in my mother's life. I just wanted to find more information about her and just write as much as I could about her.
There are ways of coping with the things that have happened that aren't just traditional ways like therapy, or group supports, traditional group type talking therapy. Writing really struck a chord with a lot of them. They seemed to really enjoy writing. And some nights we did a bit of writing in the session, or they'd go off home and they'd come in the next day or the next week and say, oh, I wrote another piece, or I wrote a poem, or, and it was astonishing. This is people that came from saying, I've never done anything like this before, to all of a sudden they were really enjoying and putting all this down.
My daughter introduced me to the Sunflower Project. Having had Paul, my son, in 1967, I've never talked about it, I talked with my daughter when she was older, but Deborah talked me into coming. I didn't really want to come. Mommy spent her life looking after the 3 of us. She spoiled us and gave us a happy childhood. Although money wasn't plentiful, we had all we needed. She often took us to the Midland Cinema, which was a great treat. Mother was a movie buff, which rubbed off on us. I was always into writing, I always loved writing anyway, so that was okay with me. The first play and the presentation, I had written a little play about my mother leaving me to the train station, the priest, to go to Belfast, and I thought it sort of made my mother out look cruel, sent me away, but she didn't, and I wanted my mammy to express my love for her and her love for me too,
You've got this group of people, they all have a life story, and so it's not, we can't capture the whole life story. So after the initial kind of warm-up session weeks, the idea was that we would pick specific moments in time and kind of focus in on those, that they could then develop creatively into monologues or poetry or discussions, points or whatever. So we just presented ideas, suggestions, possibilities, and then they made the decisions.
The beginning for Kevin and us learning about his early life began when Kevin was diagnosed with an unusual form of bowel cancer. It was suggested by his doctors that there could be a genetic link. We wanted to find out. Kevin's concerns were for his 3 beautiful children and if it might impact their lives. He wanted to find out, but didn't have any medical history or information. He'd been adopted at an early age, and all that transferred with him was his good looks and talent. He would want me to say that. So I went to Shauna and said, look, you know about my dyslexia, and I'm not very good at writing either. She says, what's your thoughts, Carmel? I said, my thoughts about now? She says, no, your thoughts about you and Kevin. How did you go about finding out he was adopted, and why? Tell me that story. So that's what I wrote. I wrote about Kevin coming home one day and saying to me, I got myself a social worker, and would you like to write? We've found the lady. Would you like to write to her? Yes. And he wrote her a letter. And the first letter that came back was, if you contact me again, I will throw myself in the lake. I do not know you. He tried again. And this time when he tried, he said, like, even her family, her brothers and sisters, if she had any, if I have aunts or uncles, would they even talk to me? So that's what I wrote about. Okay, I wrote about meeting the aunts and uncles, being promised the sun, the moon and the stars, and nothing happening.
You could really just see them coming out of themselves and the confidence growing, and the fact that at the beginning in the first session they were so worried about, you know, I'm worried about my confidentiality, I'm worried about my privacy, I'm worried about who's in the group and who's not in the group. And then by the end of that 10 weeks they were so confident that they were on a stage to an invited audience, you know, reading their pieces or performing pieces, using their full names, not worrying about confidentiality, not worrying about being judged, not worrying about stigma. And I suppose for me, no evaluation would show that, you know, no questionnaire is going to show that. And I think that's, you know, when you talk about the impact of a creative approach to this, that kind of highlights it. These are things that it's really hard to measure unless you see it with your own eyes.
At first, the other women and children, for there were pregnant children there too, looked at me with suspicion and indifference. It took a while for them to talk to me. Their expressions would have cut cold steel, protecting themselves. But behind their armour were some of the strongest people I've met, in a place where they or I should never have been. Between us older girls, we formed friendships, whispered of better times, promises made, the opening of confidences, telling of our exploits, sexual exploits. You did it where? Guess where we did it. Our bravado hid our fear. The younger girls were frightened, trusted no one, so stayed apart, silent and isolated. The one did confide in me that she hadn't known what was happening when the local lad who offered to walk her home had pushed her into a ditch and ripped her tights off. Afterwards he left her to walk alone along a dark country lane, her clothes all muck and her in shock. She told no one. She hadn't even kissed a boy before. I would have still been carrying a lot of shame about even being in a mother and baby institution. I used to hate when people asked me where my daughter was born. I used to panic and try not to answer it because I had to say Daisy Hill Hospital in Newry. And of course they're going to ask you, why were you in Newry? And I had to say, well, I was staying with friends or whatever. When we came into the project, we were encouraged to talk about what we wanted to talk about and to do writing. And we spent weeks doing different exercises that just encouraged us to be more positive and more confident within ourselves. We did a bit of writing, maybe we got a bit of guidance as to what the subject was, and people that said that they couldn't write started to flow out of them. For our confidence, for our, you know, sense of ourselves, it really was invaluable. Now I have no shame whatsoever. I realised that I was at a point in my life and I ended up somewhere that I shouldn't have ended up. Things have changed a lot, but when you're able to talk out, it helps other people. And it also helped me to look back on the people that helped me along the way.
It's very different to the groups that are there to support them as part of the inquiry groups. So those groups that have been set up to support them taking action in that way are very different, and I think in this type of creative group, it's a different type of support that's being offered. It's softer, it's maybe more in depth, it's less judgmental, it's non-hierarchical, it's just accepting, and I think that's maybe one of the strengths of it as well.
When I went into the group on a Wednesday night, it was great because you were with people who were good crack, supported each other, and like information wise as well, like to be able to find out what the building was like. Some of them were there in the same place.
It was a strange, silent place, a place of nuns, prayers, expectant mothers knitting and crocheting garments for our unborn children. The well-polished corridors gleamed in the autumn sunshine, forbidding statues of saints and other holy people hung on the corridor walls, looking down on the expectant mothers as they scrubbed and polished the floors until they shone. I stayed there until it was time to go to hospital to have my baby. I thought this would be a more joyful time in the maternity ward, but no. The nurses and midwives were silent as I pushed my son into the world, and afterwards I was put in a private room. No visitors, no one spoke to me, except the tea lady, who whispered, "Are you okay, love?" I later learned that the staff were instructed not to speak to us. My baby was put in the nursery, and I was instructed not to go there. I would often sneak down to look at my beautiful boy, who lay second up from the window, his small wristband reading Baby O'Doherty. We were asked to think of a character or a place or a thing, anything, and write a passage on it, you know, just a descriptive passage. And I loved doing that because I had done it years ago at school and hadn't really touched on it since, you know. So then as the course went on, we had a show planned for June 2022, and we had to decide what we wanted to do in this. So I thought I would do a monologue of my time in Uri 44 years ago, because although I'd often thought of it, you know, of my time back then, I didn't talk about it a lot. So this gave me great inspiration. Everything came back to me, you know, that I had been hiding and pushing beneath the surface for so long, and I just really enjoyed it. I just thought, well, this is what I've been wanting to talk about for years. People's attitude then changed towards you, you know, like church-going people, and they were still very nice, but they were hemming and hawing, and they didn't really ask how your baby was.
When something needs to find expression, when you put it in a positive way through creativity, it often, you know, it's you get double whammy there. So you're finding an expression and you're getting that, I suppose, that positive release. So it's both things are good, you know. It's a process, it's a whole process, and it has been good for this group.
We performed our monologues and our plays in the playhouse in front of family and friends, and we got a great response from everyone. They just really enjoyed it, and I was so nervous at the start, but once I got on stage I found I relaxed and didn't think of who was watching or what we were acting. We just got in there and done it.
The presentation last year, it was the best thing that I ever done in my life. It was the most lovely time that I ever had. Even speaking out in public, which I thought I could never do, and no bother.
It's well documented in clinical art therapy, music therapy, drama therapy, which is kind of more clinical approach to trauma. So this kind of group approach, it happens a lot. It's a common enough thing, but trying to find research on it is very difficult. There is research out there that shows that it can support better mental health and well-being, build confidence, build self-esteem, and those are all the things that we found at the end of the first 10 weeks.
For them to get up on a stage and read their story in public, even though it was an invited-only audience, it was still out loud and it was in a kind of a public place. The affirmation they received afterwards, in the conversations they had with people afterwards that had been at the event, it wasn't just affirmation from their own families, but from other people that were in the audience as well. And I think it was really, really empowering experience for them.
My children were very proud of me telling that story, and it affected them. They never thought they only ever heard the stories that Kevin fabricated in his head, you know. They only ever heard that side of Kevin's adoption. They didn't hear about being rejected, and that was Cormac's first time hearing about his Ellie being rejected.
Oh, it was just amazing. And everybody there, I think, really loved it and enjoyed it and got the meaning of it, you know, everything. And we all had different stories, but we were able to relate to each other. I can now talk about Paul. I used to say I had one daughter, now I can say I have a son and a daughter. To everybody, I'm not ashamed. I was ashamed for years, but you get through.
We wanted them to have some form of memento because we weren't sure that we were going to do something post the final performance. So throughout it we thought, well, we'll give them something substantial. So the book is really their performance and it's a reminder for them, but that's really where the idea for the exhibition came out of. So we were looking at that thinking that could be turned into an exhibition of sorts. And the artist who helped compile that book, Brónagh, then ended up being the facilitator for the exhibition.
But don't be scared, because I've got coloured pens and canvases and papers, so don't be scared and think that it has to be a big piece of art, because it's not. This is just the start of the process, and it's really just getting us used to the idea that this is it's actually art. It's an art project that we're working on, and it's also just really starting to try and sort of pull out some of your ideas, because I know you have all got loads of ideas, and there's no way that we're going to be able to take all of those ideas and into the one exhibition. So we have to sort of try and maybe define and filter it out and sort of really come up with what it is that you want to say and how you're going to say that. There is a therapeutic value to being involved in art in any form. And there's lots of research, there's lots of evidence out there that shows the benefits of actually engaging in the process of creating and of making and of being involved in art. Through my own past experience, I have been the artist in resident in the Western Trust, so that would have involved me working with patients, would have been working with staff, would have been working with changing the environment. So whilst I'm not a therapist, everything that I was working through them was bringing out their own creativity, and there is a therapeutic element to that. So because we're the Sunflower Project, I thought we could use this wee tool, a wee sunflower here, okay? So in each of their petals, you could maybe just sort of, I'll give you some plain sheets first, so you can just write and brainstorm ideas. And then when you translate it onto the petals, you could write maybe one word. Well, I think one of the main things about engaging in this type of work is so many people have been told that they're not creative. They've been told at school that they're no good at art, and that has shut them down to that creative process, where they actually being involved in the creative process is a really important way to be able to process things in your life and process things that's happened, and also give you a sense of joy and get you a sense of being a creator.
I've done the side, this is about, before the pregnancy, that my life was carefree, there was a lot of love around, and friends were everything to me. The punk bands, the bands in town. Then suspecting I was pregnant and taking a pregnancy test then was two very close friends. And I wouldn't look, but it was actually Katrina. I made her look. I says, I can't look, so I sat with my fingers in my ears, and she came into the sitting room in her house, and she said, yes, it's positive. I said, you're lying, and stop lying to me. And then we were kind of laughing, but it wasn't funny, So.
When we came back for the second set of 10 weeks, we found that the group were a very different group than we had encountered in the first 10 weeks. We didn't have to spend time building trust or working on their confidence or their relationships with each other, and because that was all already there.
And then in the middle of the night when I went into labour, I got the girl who was in the cubicle next to me, and we tiptoed up the corridor in pitch dark, and the only lights were those, at the bottom of the statues. There had been a red bulb, and we went up giggling with nerves, and I was saying, you knock at the door, and she was going, no, you. So the nun came out then, and she sent the other girl back, and she took me round the corner and told me to sit down. She opened these big doors, to let the ambulance men in, and she went back into her bed. So,
it's just really brought out things that I had hidden, for the shame of, all those years ago. I wasn't ashamed, but other people were ashamed, and you got that feeling when they spoke to you, So I just kind of buried everything, and it brought back sad feelings, happy feelings, but it was extremely good to get them out, for me. And then I'd think about them then when I went home and think, God, you nearly forgot. You didn't really remember that until Brónagh had, made a search, kind of soul search about it.
In his 40s, now Kevin had only once ever thought about finding his birth mother, but was told no. He was asked, did he want to kill their mother? So he stopped. But things happened and he had to go looking. Not a good find. The only day that I knew Kevin to be anyway down or sad was on his birthday. He would say, about 5 to 12 on the actual day of his birthday, he would say, did she think about me today? And I used to say, oh, Kevin, I hope so. Kevin used to make great stories up, and he'd say, a highwayman brought me up the Buncrana Road, wrapped in a leather cloak, and the sparks was flying out of the horse's hoofs, and I would go, how do you know she were only a wean? And he would say, shut the fuck up, this is my story. That part of the adoption, when I look back on it, hurt. Yeah. And not having the ability, I didn't know how to make it right, because I was never involved in, there was never anybody in our family adopted. So I couldn't say, well, you can go to this social worker, you can go to that agency, or there's people out there, Kevin. I just didn't know how to cope with it. Kevin died, our life changed. Me and the Waynes. They still don't know their medical records, but through a group that I have joined, we are getting there.
There were happy times in my life. My mother and I were always good pals. Even when I became pregnant at 18 years, she was still looking after me. The only shadow in the relationship then was being sent away from home to a convent in Belfast. Most of this time I'd forgotten. I probably blocked the memory. When I came home without my baby, things were different. My baby boy, Paul, was adopted, but this was never talked about. My mother and I still had a good rapport, but I had a lot going on in my head. Years passed. I still think of Paul every day and hope to get in touch with him. My life goes on with a beautiful husband and family. Whatever the future holds, I'll cope with it. I'm happy and content, and that's all anyone needs. It has made me so strong, so able to express myself more. I can talk about anything, and I'm not, as I say, I'm not ashamed, and I know I shouldn't have been all those years, but you do, And in 67, I mean, times were different, and just, and my mother was a religious woman, and first thing she thought, going to the priest, and that'll sort you out. It's a shame. I felt shame for years, and it's only since I started coming to our group and all, it's great, what I can talk about Paul, and I always just, I've told you before, said I had one daughter, never mentioned Paul, but now I don't feel ashamed at all. I'm able to. The Sunflower Project has made me more determined. I've had that in the back of my mind always to find Paul. I've always looked at when he would have been 3, 4 child, I always looked at children and think, I wonder would he be like that, and hoping he has had, if he was adopted, had good parents to bring him up. And over the years, and even now I look at men around that age and say, think, Is he like that?
I've written it in the middle, the baby and the rosary beads. I still have this. I actually was dreaming about rosary beads one night, I swear to God, big wooden rosary beads and pink ones. There's a message. Rosary beads were very important for me because they were the things that I spoke about at my monologue that were given to me as I left the convent. And I always had this feeling that although I got my child back, that you were swapping. You got rosary beads for giving your baby away or your baby being taken. I mean, I didn't even know that I'd kept those until I read at my attic and found those rosary beads along with letters that had been sent to me when I was in Marianville. There they are.
Oh, they're worth a fortune.
They're worth do you see if I let some of my friends read the letters that other friends, there'll be a while fallout.
No, I got reading my ones right now.
She could read hers, you know. I had forgotten how important letters were at that time because, you know, that you didn't get phone calls. Every house didn't have a phone and things like that. It's also important for the address because Marianville isn't there anymore. Their experiences, their life stories, there's a lot of trauma in there. But through the sessions, there was always a lot of humour as well. To be able to come into a group that understands you and knows what you've been through and be able to laugh and have fun with that group as well was also a very important aspect of the whole project. So tell her, Ellen.
I didn't think it was very good at all. I just
Oh, wait and bite
I just
me,
threw
eh?
it together.
And this is where you would have been brought in,
Yes.
thinking you were coming to a beautiful place, and then you would have turned a corner and the shit hit the fan then.
I have returned to Marianville. Why is everybody laughing here? This is not fair. Quite a few times. I've taken half of it back with me. It was quite a brilliant building to walk through. I walked through every room in there, explored, me and a friend explored everywhere in there. It was quite scary to go upstairs with no banisters. It was really, really good, but to see the life the nuns had. This building here was the one where my mother lived for 1 year of her life. That building. She would have cleaned the windows, scrubbed the floors. She would have knit, looked after the babies, and they had little dormitory rooms with little curtains on. She told me about that. She told me everything she knew, and she would have said it was a very lonely place. I would have imagined it would have been on a cold, dark evening. It would have been very lonely, with no family, no support. Her mother, she didn't have her mother. This wallpaper was on the nuns' convent, the first floor, up the 3 steps. There was 3 steps leading up to it, and that was on the wall. So I tore off the piece of paper, and my friend said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just want one." And she says, I don't know what she thought of me, but I took it anyway. I didn't care what she thought.
Oh, look at these.
My son got me the wee model bricks.
Oh, fantastic.
And I have the original tile from the convent floor, and I hope to have it ready in time to present it.
We were worried about how they might be impacted and being afraid of triggering them, you know, if they're telling stories. Again, coming from a trauma-informed approach, you need to try to avoid all of that. So we contracted a counsellor to come and be available for the group for the first 10 weeks. And the counsellor was rarely used. And when we asked them about that, they felt that they had sufficient support, like peer support in the group, that was enough for them just to support each other. which was really good to hear. And I suppose in a way they felt that they had this mutual understanding of what they'd all went through that maybe the counsellor didn't.
They all have so much to say, but it's too big a subject to be able to put everything into one piece of art. For this particular one, we concentrated on bringing it down to a sort of a bare shell of what it is that of maybe some memory, smell or a sight or something that they hadn't actually even thought about before.
There's a whole mixture of emotions in all of it. There's joy and fear and shame and the whole gamut. And so trying to identify those moments and then put them down on a page in some sort of image. That's where that sprung, that's where the exhibition has sprung from, those moments.
And I think it took a while for that to kind of sink in with the group, because they would be used to, if they had engaged in other types of groups around this, they were used to just telling their story, or if they've previously got support somewhere else, it was all about just recounting their story over and over again. And I think there was maybe a preconception that that's what they were going to do. So we were trying to really highlight to them how one small thing could evoke so much meaning, and that they might have one tiny artefact that related to their experience, that whenever somebody looked at it would really, have them think a lot about what that meant and bring questions up in their own mind. And that's really what art is all about.
I was able to explore my mind and be more creative with my work. I never didn't know that I could draw a building until I drew that. And since that, I've been drawing wee buildings now and then for myself, and I really enjoy it.
Before the Sunflower Project, I would never have been involved in art. I would have said, I'm useless at art, I couldn't do that. I did do drama, I did a little bit of writing, but I would never have shown it to anybody. Through this project, I discovered that even for just relaxation, for fun, for relaxation, and for even getting your feelings out, you start painting and you wonder where it takes you. It takes you somewhere different every time. So I did things that I never dreamt I would do.
They've taught me how to relax, I look at things, I look at different things now and I see things. And that sounds weird, but yeah, I can look at art different now.
Art's about all your senses. It's about seeing, it's about the smells, it's about the memory, it's about feeling. So to be able to hold something in your hand, like the stones that you've been carrying along with you and in all these years, and to be able to write on them, it's taking control of those stones and being able to put, maybe it's not just about negative experiences but also the positive, because this is a very positive process.
She told us to pick 2 stones and on one to write what we felt when we came in, and the second one what we felt like when, now at this stage. So in the first one I put fear, because that was the main feeling that I had starting the course. And then I put happy on the last one, because I have just come away from it very, very happy. And, it's just brought out a lot of good in me and made me feel at ease with myself.
At the start of the project, I would have put shame as a very big part, because that was one of the biggest things about being an unmarried mother or having given birth in a mother and baby institution, was a shame. That would have been very big for me. Towards the end of the project then, this was much more important to me and much bigger, was strength, because through art and the project we realised exactly how strong we were and how far we'd come.
You see that just enough for your part. Objective is to get the ink into the line.
That was all kind of leading up to the big piece of work, which was going to be the printmaking. It's a very old-fashioned type of craft.
I know.
and it just felt really appropriate because a lot of what the group was based on is historical issues, and everybody thoroughly enjoyed that. It was an opportunity to really get messy. It didn't require a huge amount of skills, but still some.
You're dusting, let's say, but very lightly. It's a man dusting. It's a man dust. You're all laughing, you know exactly what they mean.
We were all amazed that 1 week we hadn't heard of printmaking, and 3 or 4 weeks later, here everybody was making prints.
Can you lift it up? And there you go.
That's gorgeous.
I did this one because it reminded me of when I went into labour in the middle of the night. My friend in the next cubicle came in. She heard me fussling about and up and down, walking about, and I said, I'm in labour, I'll have to go up and knock on the nun's door. And the corridor was dark and it was just dimly lit by, there were statues with lights round their feet, you know, and that was the only light we saw. That is the image that stayed with me, yes. You know, it was a very important time to me, but it wasn't normal. You know, it wasn't like you would expect when you're going in to have your child, but I've never forgotten it, you know, and I've never forgotten the friend who came with me.
You're born, Kevin! This is one of the stories Kevin told the children when they found out that their daddy was adopted, and he told them so many stories, but this one they used to say, go and tell me the one about the highwayman. This highwayman came up and scooped me up in his arms and wrapped me up in his cloak and put me on a horse. Now there was thunder and lightning and the storm was raging and the sparks were flying out of that horse's hoofs, and he galloped me across the border to Derry. And the children loved it. And I used to say at the end of it, how do you remember, Kevin? You're only a wee. It's my story, isn't it? Isn't it my story?
I learned so much going to the printers. It was something I never done in my life. Thought I never could produce something like that. It was just the way I remember the building. This would be the nuns' convent, and this would be the chapel. The chapel was here. I have all the basic windows on there. That's just the way the building looked. I also have included a little mother and baby in here, part of my history, part of my life that I had when I lived there 9 months with my mother.
This is an adult hand and a little child, and the rosary beads are entwined around the both. And I call it the stolen child because that's the way that I felt that these children were stolen, were taken off their mothers without them being given proper permission, because they weren't in a position to give proper permission. So that's very powerful, a very powerful image for me.
I'm an artist.
You're an artist. You're an artist.
That is beautiful. We did this printout of mother and baby, which reflects to Paul and myself. You know, so I mean, I knew him for the first 3 weeks of his life, and you just get to love someone, you know, so much. We had looked at different photos of mother and baby, but I just thought that was beautiful, and to me, it's special. It's something special and something I did myself.
It's gorgeous, eh? Look at you, it's beautiful. I think everybody should be doing this here, coming under these hallowed halls. Oh, it's amazing.
What do you think of it? Isn't that amazing?
Oh dear, I'm very nervous.
I know. It's very moving, isn't it? It's very...
Look, it's Katrina's wee girl and my wee boy when they were weans. I was calling down to Katrina's one day, just on a visit, and I brought him with me, and then we got those two on the sofa. In picture.
I never believed that I could ever, in any way, shape or form, produce something like that.
I see them and hear them in the natural lights to do, scrubbing floors, cleaning windows, keeping down to doing laundry. My mother was decorating, she was always smiling. I was travelling to...
That's what our heads were like until this group sorted us.
That's right.
We were all garbled like that.
To me, the success of it is what the participants got out of it, and whether they felt it was worthwhile for them, whether they enjoyed the process, whether they felt that it did maybe unlock a different way that they can reflect or deal with things, and how proud they are at the end of when they have the exhibition and they are inviting families or friends or strangers into this very intimate and personal part of their world and sharing that story with the world.
They've got an exhibition of their pieces of art and their life stories in a very public place, and people who were frightened, and I think shame was the biggest emotion or the biggest barrier in their lives, and misunderstanding of themselves. So to be able to sort of showcase that, work through that, have something positive to say about it, I think for them that's the success, and for us it's just knowing that they were able to do that.
These women are so brave, and they spoke so confidently and so powerfully, and it's accredited in this exhibition. I think we have moved on a wee bit, but there is still definitely work to be done. But this is going a huge way in impacting and telling their stories, and for other people to hear them. I think their voices have been raised, or their voices are going to be heard, and they're not going to be sitting back anymore.
I feel grateful that I've been allowed to hear the stories, and they found a space to be able to externalise and verbalise the stories, which I think is so important to communicate them and tell them out there. I think it's a shared pain, which is interesting because I haven't experienced that, but you still feel that pain. So touching and important.
And this exhibition, just to walk in the way it's laid out, is so strong. And actually, probably one of the most powerful exhibitions that I've come to be quite honest. You know, the human story behind it is just amazing. So a privilege.
Every single item that is placed and how purposefully it's placed is just stunning. I'm blown away by the project and wish them every success in going forward, and I cannot wait to see what they uncover next and who they pull forward, who they inspire to shed off that shame, because it's just they're phenomenal women.
When we went in, we didn't know. It could have ended in week 1, it could have ended in week 2. We had no real idea if they were going to stick with it. I think as they grew in confidence, realising that they were creative, that they had unlocked something within themselves that was creative, that they had a skill set, that they could tell their story, that their voice was being heard, that it was unique to them, and that they knew that they were safe with myself and Colette, they just tore on.
I was so delighted the way that turned out. At the start, you never thought anything was going to come so well together. I am at peace in myself now, and the thing that I would like to see is other people who are sitting with a heavy heart and not being able to speak about their experiences, if it helps them to come out even to anyone and be able to talk about their experiences, good or bad or both.
My fear has completely gone. It's like, and what's going to happen next? My emotions are settled. Being with these women just worked wonders. This side of Kevin, I never, ever divulged it to anybody. And now it's out there, and I'm sure if Kevin was alive, you would have had him up there telling his story. So I am honoured to be able to stand there and talk about my Kevin and his 3 lovely children, and they have no shame, and neither have I.
When we came in, we weren't sure what to expect. We were very weary. Birth mothers and their children haven't always been treated very well when we've tried to talk about things. There was people coming in with fear and shame, very much shame that you're even on a mother baby home and everything else. There's none of that now. We're just very open about everything, and we want to encourage other people in our position to come forward and be open as well. So it was brilliant. It was really a great experience for us, and we've made friends for life as well.
I couldn't eat yesterday. The nerves was killing me. I thought I wasn't going to be able to make it here today. I did. It's been lovely to see all my work. I still like to investigate more stories and more things about the past, but okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I wanted a piece of my history. That was where my mother was, I was, Mass, nuns, and transfixed by there. I go back every so often. I'm able to speak out now, which I never was fit to do in my life. Never could have done that. Now I can.
I feel lovely and contented that everything, went off well tonight. I'm happy and contented that I can talk to the world and tell everybody that I've had a baby boy, and which for 50 odd years I never spoke about it, just felt shame. Even I was out of town or that, I seen a fella at Paul's age, whatever age, over the years. I'd always say, I wonder does he look like that, or, what he looks like, and always wondering did he hopefully had a happy childhood and upbringing. He was with a nice family, and hopefully one day I'll meet him.
We found as this went on that people are coming and talking to us about their own experiences, and we've discovered that a lot of people that thought that they would have had no connections to these times have indeed had a connection, be it friends, family, being adopted, being an adoptee, being a birth mother, whatever. There's so many of us in Derry and in the north that have had this experience. The Sunflower Project for me was a way of dealing with trauma and an art-based, relaxed environment. I would highly recommend it to anybody. It's led by the group themselves. We even picked our own name. We were able to pick anything that went on. We could say that we wanted it to stop, or we liked this, we wanted more of that. But as a lifeline, it's been a lifeline for me.
You know the way you go through life and you have a friend who's there all the time, and then you meet acquaintances. I now look on the Sunflowers as I've known them all my life. because of what they've told me, because of what they've confided in me and what I have confided in them. My children didn't miss out on anything by missing out on the woman who didn't want their daddy, because those women and the talks that we had in the Sunflower, it gave me a new strength. Rejection hurts, but it's not the end of the world.
It's bringing out the best in people, for their mind, how to express their feelings, to have each other in a support system. You've got really caring people, and I've had a great time, and I've friends for life.
What happened then obviously doesn't happen now, but I couldn't have changed things back then. No one could have. It was just the way of life. It's the way it was. But, it was stuff that we were all kind of grieving silently about. And the Sunflower Project, through the writing, the drama and the artwork, brought out so much and gave me I was liberated at a lot of the times, about certain things, and I just felt a much stronger person.
A stronger and a better person, and I'll go forward as a better person, and I'm hoping this all too that maybe other people that haven't, like myself, had kept quiet for years, will come forward, and because it's such a great relief to get things, something like that's big off your chest. It's amazing how it just relieves you. It's just a relief of Derry.